So, in today's perilous edition of What is this guy talking about while he's driving? Um, Today I'm talking about the idea of fatalism, which is a word I didn't know at the time, but the first time I can identify it in myself was when I was about 6 years old, 7 years old, at the beach, and a big wave came and knocked me down. I had been standing, and suddenly didn't know if I was upside down or backwards, but I was under the water, been feeling like I'd been in a washing machine, like, oh, disoriented, where am I? And so I didn't know which way was up, logically, and just your body just kind of should know, or usually knows. Just put your feet on the ground, stand up, right? Which way is up. But for that instant, I didn't know which way was up. And so the thought went through my head, well, this was a great life. I'm glad that I got to live it. And I guess, goodbye, cruel world. And my cousin reached down and pulled me up out of the water, and she said, in a nice way, what are you doing? Why don't you just stand up? And I was just so thankful. Oh my goodness, she saved my life. But now I'm thinking, well, why didn't I just stand up? Feel around, find the sand, put your feet on the sand, and stand up. Like, what are you doing? Just being okay with staying under the water when you don't want to be under the water. Like, do something to get up, get out of that situation. So I think these days I would call it fatalism, like I said, but I would also call it inertia. Like, whatever's happening, oh, it's okay, it's all right, just leave it alone, don't do anything, this too shall pass. And I was thinking about this when I think about musical genres. In general, gospel music is like, it will be all right, as opposed to let's make it all right. I think rock and roll and maybe pop are a little more, you can do it. And obviously gospel is not centered on you, gospel is centered above. But if it's just waiting for a rescue, that's kind of what it's about. As just like country music is kind of about hardship. Now, country music can talk about overcoming hardship, and gospel does talk about overcoming hardship a lot, but it's about the future, and God will make it all right. And then if we go a little deeper and we divide gospel music or church music into second person and third person, the hymns that I miss, that have been replaced by the praise choruses or praise and worship time, or songs that are now on the radio, those are more second person. They're to God. God, you are this, God, you are that. Whereas hymns tended to be more third person. They would talk about God as opposed to God. So I think that in a way, words are spells. You spell words, they're spelling. We're surrounded by words. In the beginning was the Word. God spoke the world into existence. So words are really powerful, but we're just inundated with words. There's lyrics everywhere in the public spaces, like restaurants. Well, not all restaurants, but restaurants and shopping. There's lyrics that we listen to in our cars and TVs are, of course, filled with words. So we're just bombarded with these spells, and there's too much to take in. And I'm thinking now of the scene in Sleeping Beauty where the three fairies, Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather, represented by pink, blue, and green, are fighting back and forth. And it's kind of like the movies that I'm now bored with. The superheroes get bigger and bigger, and then, somebody has to win, but they can't just win by having a strong fist. They have to throw themselves through the wall, and then they have to like jump as high as a building, and then they have to, be some kind of creature that's unimaginable. And it's like, I don't really care who's gonna win that battle, because they're both so unrelatable. It's like, this is boring. And I think it's boring because we're inundated with that information. Every superhero needs to top the other superhero. And just like the fairies making that cake in the Sleeping Beauty movie, they have to do this ordinary thing, make a cake, but in this extraordinary way. So, you're using a bulldozer to or a forklift to lift a fork, or a bulldozer to, dig a mud puddle. It's just too much. It's just overwhelming. So back to the overwhelmingness of words, their power is still there, and it's confusing depending on which words you're listening to, but it's also overwhelming because everybody's trying to push too hard. So of course the example of the age is the news and the media, and everybody blames the media for everything. But if you hear half the story, you have a very strong opinion. But if you ever were able to hear the whole story, then the issues would come to the surface and not just be clouded over by the screams about anything. There are just people who are vilified, and no matter what they do, it's portrayed as the worst thing ever. And if you're told that over and over, you believe that. So, I've got things I believe because I've been told them over and over. And they, the eternal they, have things they believe because they've heard them over and over. But we haven't heard the same things. So we don't have opposing opinions. We have opposing information. And I think, for me, there's no way to get to the bottom of any of these issues because there's so much information to go through, and it's overwhelming. So, back to the fatalism. It's easy to just stay under the water and wait for the inevitable, but I'm trying to make things happen and come to conclusions and do things on purpose, intentionally, as opposed to just be buffeted by the waves. So that's it. Have a good day. Be careful out there.